Hello, Will and Kenny. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
And Kenny, you look better. You look like 100% better.
I turned the corner probably like on Tuesday or so. My oxygen has consistently been at like 99 or 100. I'm able to walk without being completely winded. So I feel really good today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. It's good to see you almost back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Will, what are you doing? So you look very intent.
I'm crocheting packers or crocheting dicks right now. So this is one I just made. I have an Etsy store where I sell these for trans guys typically. They use them as packers in their underwear to create a nice little bulge. But I actually got an order this past week for the first time from a cisgender guy who wanted one just to accentuate what he already had. So it was cool. I got to make a custom one just for him with the measurements he asked for and everything. So that's what I'm doing right now.
How fun. You just get to sit there while we're in a YouTube episode crocheting dicks.
Yep.
I mean, imagine. So is that like that's one of your coping strategies? Because we're going to talk about that today, by the way.
Yes, it definitely is. I find it very relaxing. It keeps my hands busy. So it's something fun to do. A lot of people, they want to have a fidget spinner or something, but it's something productive I'm doing. I'm getting paid to do it. And I can do it literally while I'm talking to people, while I'm in Zoom meetings at work. So I usually am hiding it at that point because I don't want them to ask what you're doing. Watching TV. So yeah.
I like that. I like that. I might get you to make one for me. I mean, I don't need a packer or anything, but it would just be cool to have one.
Oh yeah,
It's
I know some people who
very
have bought. It's like some people who buy them because I do them custom colors. People just tell me what design or pattern they want. Like I made a trans flag one this past week. I have one that I made myself. That's a flag that I keep in my office. I made one for the Sexology Institute. That was Sexology Institute colors for their office. So sometimes people just order them just for the novelty of having a crochet dick. So.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So there you have it, everybody. That's one way to alleviate the stress that in your life. You can learn to crochet dicks. So get in touch with Will if you want to learn how to crochet dicks. So today's episode, we've gotten put our heads together and come up with some resiliency skills, ways that we personally try to cope with all of the stuff that's happening, all the stuff that's been going on for the last year, and just in general, because we practice what we preach. As mental health and sexual health professionals, we're always making suggestions to people about coping strategies and coping skills. And we're going to share with you some of the ways that we cope and some of the things that we hear from other people, other professionals, and people that we work with, very creative ways to create your resiliency bucket. So I remember, let's see, when was this? It was 2 episodes ago, I think, 2 or 3 episodes ago. I talked about my legend planner, like what my goals were for the year. And I'm continuing to do that. And for me, that's a good coping strategy for me to kind of stay organized. So I've written down what my year goals are. And so for health and fitness, of course, I'm going to avoid COVID. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid COVID. I want to eat healthier. And usually people will just throw that out there as a blanket statement. You're going to eat healthier. What I really mean that I want to start cooking more of my meals and making sure that the foods are fresh and organic and not a lot of chemicals in the foods. That's what I mean by eating healthier. I'm going to make it a point to be outside more, walk outside more so that I can get vitamin D naturally. As I mentioned, I was working on my career stuff, trying to finish up a sexual health residency. And so I want to knock that out by the end of the year. I've got projects that are associated with that. And even doing the podcast and the YouTube channel, it's helping me with that to achieve those goals. I want to save money for a car. I want to learn more about stocks and bonds. I want to pay off some debt. So, from a financial perspective, I already have goals in place for that. I want to read more. I'm probably not going to physically read. I'm probably going to do audiobooks because then it allows me to move around while I'm reading. I want to have more intellectual exchanges with people because I really enjoy that. And that includes you guys too. You know, that's one of the reasons I like doing the podcast and the doing these for the YouTube channel because it's intellectually stimulating. I want to be more assertive, meaning I'm going to say no more often. I want to spend more time with people who have been friends, and that's has been a challenge. You know, we've talked about the cognitive dissonance over the past year of people who you thought were sharing your values, and then you're discovering that they really don't see you. And so now I want to spend more time with the people who I know who have always been there for me. And that's going to be important for me this year. I want to maintain the boundaries that I have with my family, but I want to be less rigid because I think over the last few years I've been very, very rigid with the way that I deal with my family just because I feel anxious. Every time I know there's going to be an exchange with my family, I almost have a panic attack, you know, whether it's going to be a phone call or somebody says, hey, we're having a family reunion. I panic because I don't want to be around them. And so I need to be less rigid about that and realize that they mean well, you know, and I don't have to be mixed up in any drama in order to, you know, associate with them. And I have control over how much contact I'm going to have. I want to move some of the people who have been in my social circle to the outer orbits because, again, I want to be closer to the people who have been here, you know, this last couple of years. You know, the people who listen, the people who see me, the people who really share my values, the people who have my back. I want them closer, you know, a closer orbit. And then some of the other folks, I'm going to move them out, you know, closer to Pluto or whatever. But it's, you know, they're not going to be as close because I won't have the emotional energy for that. I want to focus on myself more. This is the romance part. Focus on me more and not a partner. Doesn't mean I'm not going to focus on the partner, but I need for this year to be about me. I need to do my career and I want to be creative and start attending cultural events and exhibits and things like that I have liked before, and then not worrying about what somebody else wants and needs. Spending more time being grounded and meditating, getting back into yoga and just doing more things to be centered. And these are just all things that I'm doing for my resiliency and for my self-care. And I told you guys that I would share this with you. And so this is the progress that I've made in the little book that I have here.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Erin, because I think it's really important to share with our listeners and our watchers, you know, we're humans, we're not robots. And in so doing, there are things that we have to plan in order to be well, to be professionals. Like, if I don't take care of me, I can't take care of anybody else. And like you said, we practice the things that we teach and talk to our clients about. So things that I do as a mental health professional to cope, and I find that I've had to really put this into practice as we continue through our pandemic that the world is experiencing. First of all, I have to tell myself that it's normal to have feelings of anxiousness, fear, uncertainty, and nervousness because I'm a human. I'm not a robot. And I ask myself the question aloud, am I stressed or am I anxious? And for many of my clients, they want to know, well, what's the difference between stress and anxiety? And stress is typically a short-term response to a recognized threat, such as a deadline, missed opportunities, a dog that you don't know in the street who's like been following you, hurt feelings. Whereas anxiety sometimes kind of just hangs around and may not have an identifiable cause or trigger. When I'm telling myself that I'm a human being, I do this aloud. So it becomes external to me. I don't just do it in my head, which is really helpful because I don't consider myself a type A personality, but a lot of people say that I'm a type A personality. I'd like to say that I'm a little bit more flexible and free, but then in my day-to-day interactions with people, I recognize that it's sometimes difficult for me to do that. So I have to say out loud that I'm human. And then I remind myself that feeling stressed or anxious is not a sign that I'm disordered, weak, or a failure. I think a lot of my clients, when they come into session, they're like, I'm so embarrassed to be here and to be asking for help. And I have to remind them that what we're experiencing right now is new for everybody, even for generations of people who experienced the pandemic over 100 years ago. The fallout from that. This is still a new experience because of the technology that we have. So because I am solution focused and person centered, I believe that I do have the strength to be amazing within me. And so being resilient, reminding myself that I've bounced back and that I can do difficult things. And so I do focus on the things that I can control. That's not to say that I put my head in the sand and don't stay educated about what's happening around me. But I do practice taking a time out. With everything that's happened this past week at the Capitol, when all that news was unfolding, man, I have to admit that I was kind of freaked out. And so I had to turn off the television. I had to put down my social media and take about an hour for myself and take a nap, and kind of just be outside of everything that I was experiencing because it became very overwhelming. I was having many conversations with peers and colleagues like, what could this do for the state of our country? So I had to put things in perspective. And once I was centered, I was able to come back and get more educated. And then I do small things to connect me back to my community and nature. Just like Erin was saying, she's going to be cooking more and just taking better care of herself and being more active. For me, I do bird watching. With the bird watching, I got myself a new bird book. So I'm super excited. It came in the mail. So it's a backyard guide to birds. And we have, my husband and I, we bought some new bird food and we are going to be mixing it up this weekend so that I can put it out and see if I can attract some new birds to our backyard. And also I ordered, because I'm nuts, I ordered some birdhouses, like different kinds. So like some that are weaved to hopefully promote some birds to come nest in my yard in the spring. So those types of things help me be a more centered person so that I can be giving to the people around me and my partner.
I love it. You'll have to get some video or some pictures so you can share some of the pictures of the birds.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Make a list of all the different types of birds do you have like a running list of where you keep track of them?
Okay, so in this new book, they have at the bottom of each page, they have like, if you see them, if the birds come, and then like what month do they come through their migratory patterns. So you can keep track of when they come. So I'm very excited. We had a flock last week of some red-winged blackbirds, and They come typically to the backyard around dusk, and they like shoo all the other birds away, like all the cardinals, all the wrens, and they just ate all the bird food. But it was just, there were so many of them. There were probably hundreds of them. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
Well, you're more methodical about the bird watching. I just purchase 20, 30-pound bags of bird seed, the mixed bird seed, and just sprinkle it all around the house, open up all of the windows, and I hear birds all day and I see them flying around. And then the cats go to the windows, and that's like cable television for them. And it's relaxing for them too, because when I put the bird seed in the bushes, then the birds are fluttering around in the bushes and the cats just love it. It is relaxing. It's like having nature in your house.
Absolutely. For the people who are feeling stressed, finding, and because, like we see it all over television, like you got to get active. Activity doesn't have to be you running like miles. It could just be you getting some sunshine, some vitamin D that's natural, sitting outside in your backyard, listening to nature. So, yeah, that's being active.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because it is harder. The gyms are open, then they're closed, and then they're open, and then they're closed. And so people's workout routines have been thrown off. And so you have to do other things that are not necessarily workout routines, but you're still able to be active. Mm-hmm. And being outside is important so you can get your vitamin D. Will, do you have anything that's part of your resiliency bucket?
I didn't make a PowerPoint or anything. I'm not that prepared, but I do have some things that I do. When you asked me about it earlier this week, I was thinking about it. My first instinct was like, nah, I don't have anything. But after I thought about it, I really do. So things like the crochet, I like to have things that are hands-on. So I'm always fixing things around my house. This week we've been doing a lot of painting. I installed baseboards in a room and, like repairing things, making packers, crocheting other things. I find working with my hands really relaxes me. And also, apologies if y'all hear that in the backyard. We have a landscaper who's apparently blowing leaves right outside my window. But anyway, so yeah, I really noticed that I tend to be, especially when I'm stressed, I do more projects because it's very satisfying to see something. Like with the Packers, I start with yarn, so there's nothing, and then making something out of nothing, essentially, and it's very satisfying to see it. So I do lots of projects that help me de-stress, decompress from everything that's going on. I also, in addition to having, everyday stresses, I do have a lot of anxiety that I have to deal with, like a lot of people do. And I'm not ashamed to say, I have a therapist I talk to. I have medications that I take for it. I have one I take daily, and then I have another one that I take when I'm having anxiety attacks. So, and that's something I feel like a lot of people don't like to talk about. They feel like there's something wrong if they have to take medication, like they're failing. But sometimes you need to do that. It's no different than taking vitamins to be healthy. It's no different than taking other stuff. Just a part of your normal daily health. Your mental health is a very important part of that. So yeah, I have that I do as well because, crocheting can only do so much. I also come from my family. We have a lot of genetic anxiety disorders that run in our family. I think everyone in my family is on some sort of medication for it. So it's something that we all live with and we all commiserate. So that's my other thing I do is I have a really good group that I talk with, my family, that we can all share our woes. And so having that strong foundation of support system around me is the main things that I do, and having y'all to talk to as well. To me, this is where I get to decompress about a lot of things, talk to other professionals where y'all understand things that, my family just will never understand. So I have different areas that I talk to. I have y'all where I can talk about the mental health and all the sexology stuff that we go through. So that's really for me is having my good support group too.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that, like the social part, because we've had to I don't like the phrase social distance, because we don't need to social distance. We need to be physically distant because, for health and safety reasons, but not socially distant. We can still have social
Right.
contact and just be
Yeah.
creative.
Exactly. Like, we're all on online meeting right now, and a lot of people use Zoom or Skype and stuff. I FaceTime with my family a lot. People don't need to just hole up in a little hole, bury themselves in the ground, and say you're socially distanced and, start suffering from the lack of social interaction. There's still ways to be social with people. You just have to get more creative so you're not physically there, but it doesn't mean that you can't still interact with people.
Yeah. And then this also leads into like being resilient as a couple, the sexual resiliency. Like, what are people doing for that? Because if you're stuck in the house with somebody for months and months and months, and that's not what you're used to, there's a lot of frustration that can be built, where you're discovering that the person isn't who you thought they were. So, yeah, we're having to come up with ways to be sexually resilient. I've got a little bit of information here, and it's more self-reflective than anything else. Just as you benefit from having personal resilience in order to bounce back from life's challenges, it's important to have sexual resilience. Sexual resilience means knowing how to cope in spite of setbacks or barriers, limited resources. Sexual resilience is a measure of how you want something in your sex life and how much you're willing, able to overcome obstacles to get that. So it's the exact same thing as resilience, but you put the sexual component in it. And I have an assignment that I like to ask people to do about their resiliency bucket, but you can also do a sexual resiliency bucket. So you're first going to think about, like, what do you already have in your resiliency bucket? What are your strengths, the coping strategies that you've used, and how are you going to translate that over into sexual resilience? And so an example of that would be, I'm a very driven, confident, independent, creative person. I've been fortunate enough to survive cancer. Okay. And so that right there would help a person to have sexual resilience, because you're talking about confidence, being driven, being creative and independent. And I've met some of the most incredible people who have survived cancer. And so I think those people would be incredibly sexually resilient. Okay. And anytime you're creative, you have the capacity to be sexually resilient. Like, we've been in a pandemic for the last a little over a year. So we have not been able to be as social as we want to be with others. We've been stuck in the same place with a partner. And so sometimes things get kind of routine. And so there are other ways that you can be social. There are other ways that you can be sexual in a consensual, non monogamous way, like flirting with other people, the sexting and texting and playing sex games, like on the platforms like we have here today. There are a lot of different ways that you can spice things up. And it's what you're doing is you're putting things in your sexual resiliency bucket. So what are you all's thoughts on that?
As you were talking about the resiliency, the individual growth that we have individually, like you said, can be transposed into a couple. Because if it is that you found your worth earning money, and then because of the pandemic, you're unable to go to work, you kind of have to like re-identify your value within yourself. And then your partner this is an opportunity for you to grow with your partner. Like, oh, I didn't know you had that skill or talent. How can I support you? Earlier this week, Erin, you did a video about communication, and the types of communication: physical, nonverbal, verbal, written. And then, so as you were talking about that kind of just goes back to the recalibrating the relationship. This is where we were before the pandemic. Now we're sitting here holed up together. Neither one of us can leave. how do we communicate now? And how do we make it spicy or fun? Or how do we bring it back? Because we used to include other people in our relationship. And now we can't do that for safety. If you're artistic, taking a drawing course or practicing drawing the human anatomy, like having your person pose for you, that could be super hot and very, very cool. Or sculpting or things of that nature. So that could be a way to increase that partnership. And then also giving each other space, like within the household.
And there are some very helpful apps that you can download on your iPhone or your phone for couples. And this works especially for people who are in a distance relationship. The apps, one of the ones, it's called Spicer, and it's kind of like the yes, no, maybe list. So if you're familiar with that, there's the Love Nudge, and this one gets into the love languages, goals, and connection. You have the one called Honey, and it's HONI, and it helps you to come up with surprises, fantasies, and there's some coupons and so forth in there. And then there's the Sex Roulette, and it's like a sexy truth or dare. So those are some things that you can put into your sexual or relationship resiliency bucket, moving forward, because we're just in a different space. And so you have to do things to come out of the routine. And then there have been some articles. Well, I send people articles all the time. And so, I mean, if you email me, I'll be able to, pick a topic, and I'm sure I'll have an article for it. There are a lot of our podcast episodes that we've done in the past that are pretty interesting, like 10 common questions sex therapists and coaches are asked, the male sexual health overview, the art of ass play, JOI, the jerking off instruction. We talked about the research supporting masturbation and pain management. We did a few social justice ones, consensual non-monogamy. I also interviewed a couple who practice social nudism. That was really interesting. And I hope to do another one of those. And then gender identity, there's an interview that we have with someone, and then an interview with a dominatrix. So we have some interesting podcast episodes already. So you can go and listen to those together. And then Dr. Jessica O'Reilly, she has a podcast, and her it's under Dr. Jess, Sex with Dr. Jess. Those are really entertaining, and she does those podcasts with her partner, and she's been with him for many, many years. And I find those podcasts very, very entertaining. And you can put those in your sexual resiliency bucket as well.
I think it's interesting that you talk about that, because it makes me think of all the people that I know who've been taking this time, since we are more at home, to learn new skills and do a lot of learning, educating themselves on different topics, getting new audiobooks, like you were saying, one of your goals is reading more. I know a lot of people have been reading more, listening to more audiobooks, watching podcasts, videos, stuff like that. So it's a great way to spend some time, and you and your partner, that's something you can do together. You can find videos and watch them together, or send each other your favorite ones and stuff. I love your cat. And
I love her too. She just wants to be held.
She's your baby. She's like, Mama, hold me. Pay attention to me.
She's my baby. So forgive that in the episode.
But yeah, so I think that's a great thing. Listening to the podcast and stuff is a great thing that you can do together. An activity you can do together, learn together, and try out stuff that you learn.
Mm-hmm. There is a series on Amazon Prime, and it's Masters of Sex. Have you all seen that?
I haven't.
You're familiar with the Kinsey Institute and Masters and Johnson, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what this is about. It's how this all got started back in the 1950s. And Dr. Masters was an OB-GYN. And so all of the stuff that he was doing that was associated with his research, it was kind of underground, because the hospital they weren't having any of that. Okay. because this was back in the 50s. And so it's how all of this got started. And I've already watched the entire first season. That would be really cool to watch. And it's really, I thought it was fascinating. I don't know whether it's true or not, but they actually did some of the research together. Like they were in the lab having sex and asking what stage of sex were they at. Like, oh, well, where are we? Are we at the refractory period? Well, where are we? What are we doing? And then after they have their orgasm, then they run out and go and like take notes and document how all of that happened from a scientific perspective. I
That's
thought
awesome.
that was really
I haven't
fascinating.
I haven't heard that. I know about all the different people that they had, but honestly, knowing their mindset, that makes sense.
It
I
does.
mean, we do similar things. I mean, maybe not in the lab, but we'll like try things out, be like, "Ooh, let's try this," or something like that. They just were doing it, a little bit more in depth. But
Yes, it was. It was so interesting. And just to know that they did all of that stuff back in the 50s and where we are today, it's just mind blowing. So if y'all can watch that, you can add that to your sexual resiliency bucket. It will be worth it.
I made a note of it. I jotted it down.
what was the name of it again?
Masters of Sex.
Masters of Sex. Okay, and that one's on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm adding that to my list.
And as you can tell, I'm not this time recommending a bunch of serial killer stuff.
I watched those, by the way. I went and watched that whole show you talked about.
Yes, I watch those too because it's fascinating to me. Things about murder and mayhem and all of that, just the whole behavior and cognition behind
Mhm.
it. It's fascinating to me. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. That's my thing. That's how I'm resilient. So does anybody have anything else?
No, I'm grateful to have heard both of your ways that you fill your own bucket and how to incorporate this into a partnership bucket, Like you're not doing it alone, everybody, Even if you're afar, you're doing it long distance. Being able to watch a show together, play a game together, learn a new skill together. Just watching Will over there, I'm just like, man, I need some yarn. I need to watch a video that looks so rhythmic as he's like moving his hands. And I'm like, yes, I want that for me.
It's very soothing. Half the time I'm not paying attention to the crochet because you get in a rhythm. And then I'll just be sitting there watching TV and then I look and I did this while we were talking. I started out, there was just the end of it and I've done the whole thing. So,
That was quick.
yeah, it doesn't take me long to see here's the first one I did and here's my second one. So, I get in a rhythm and then you're good to go. And then you're like, oh, you pleasantly surprise yourself. Like, look at all this progress I made.
Yes. Well, all right, you guys. Well, I thought this was I hope it's productive. I hope somebody benefits from it. To see what these ordinary professionals do. We're suggesting some of these things when we're in sessions with people, and we're just, or we do it from like a treatment plan or treatment intervention model. But these are things that we do as just real people, and they're effective.
Absolutely.
You can see that all of us we're okay. We're hanging in here. So
That's all I can ask of y'all, just to keep coming back so that I can say, oh, what did you think about this? Or how did we all survive this? Resilience. We as people, we as humans, we are far more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. Having a group of people to speak with, communicate with, and then encourage, because with this pandemic, I have found that people are encouraging each other far more maybe than we would have been open to say. We're not in this alone, and there's been so much encouragement and positivity shared. So just
and this is a way for us to be a community. We can't be a community in other ways, but this is a way for us to share and be a community.
absolutely.
All right. Well, I will see you guys next week. Maybe we'll come up with something a little racier.
Ooh, I'm up for that.
Yeah, sounds fun.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
This podcast is produced by Erin Alexander, hosted by Kenny Pullitt and Erin Alexander, and mixed and edited by William Lynch.